Good evening and welcome to the Robert H. Jackson Center. We are honored to have you join us tonight for what promises to be a moving and powerful program. At the Robert H. Jackson Center, we are committed to advancing justice and preserving the lessons of history, principles that Robert H. Jackson himself championed as Chief Prosecutor for the United States at the Nuremberg trials. Jackson understood that the horrors of the Holocaust were not just crimes against individuals, but crimes against humanity. His pursuit of justice at Nuremberg laid the foundation for human rights protections and international law that continue to shape our world today. This evening, we will hear the remarkable story of survival, resistance, and resilience. The story of Edith and Kurt Leuchter, as told by their daughter, Deborah Stueber. Through her work as part of the Generation Speaker Series at the Holocaust Center of Pittsburgh, Deborah has dedicated herself to sharing her parents' experience during the Holocaust, how they survived, how they fought against injustice, and how they built a new life in America. Take a moment to imagine yourself at 12 or 13 years old. You have your whole life ahead of you. You might be thinking about school, or your friends, or what you want to be when you grow up. Maybe you spend your afternoons riding your bike, exploring your neighborhood, or playing games with your friends. Then one day, everything changes. You are told you're no longer allowed to go certain places. People you have known your whole life stop talking to you. You are forced to wear something that marks you as different. Soon, you are no longer allowed to attend school. You hear rumors of people being arrested for no reason. Then the arrests turn to something far worse. You see families dragged from their homes and forced onto trains. People you know vanish overnight. The life you once knew is now unimaginable. Eventually, your own family is forced onto one of those trains, packed into a rail car, no food, no water, no idea where you're going. When the doors finally open, you step into a nightmare. You are surrounded by barbed wire and armed guards. The only thing that matters is survival. This was the reality for many. As children and teenagers, they were forced to navigate a world where their very existence was under threat. They survived persecution, resisted injustice, and after unimaginable loss, they built new lives. At a time when survivor testimony is becoming rarer, Deborah's work ensures that these stories are not lost, but instead that they continue to educate, inspire, and challenge us to reflect both our history and our responsibility today. By sharing her parents' legacy, she reminds us that remembrance is not passive. It is an active commitment to truth, justice, and human dignity. While many of us are gathered here in person, I do want to recognize that some of us are joining virtually, but no matter how you're participating, we encourage you to continue the conversation beyond tonight, whether by sharing what you've learned, engaging in discussion, or exploring ways to better promote historical understanding and justice in our world today. We are deeply grateful for Deborah for being here this evening and her dedication to preserving this history. Before I begin, please everybody remind you to put your cell phones on silent for the duration of the presentation. Thank you. Now please join me in welcoming Deborah Stueber.
Good evening. It's my honor and privilege to tell you my parents' story this evening. Thank you to Elizabeth Hosier and the Robert H. Jackson Center for inviting me to speak. Special thanks to the Holocaust Center of Pittsburgh, who continues to support me as well as my friends and family, several of whom are here this evening, both virtually and in person, including my husband. I'm very blessed that my parents, who are both Holocaust survivors, are alive and well at 96 and 97, and who will be joining us from their home after my presentation. Sadly, as time goes by, the voices and eyewitnesses of the Holocaust are dwindling quickly. In November of 2018, shortly after the Tree of Life massacre in Pittsburgh, where somebody murdered 11 Jews in their synagogue, my sister spoke at a vigil in Brooklyn, New York. And in part of her speech, she mentioned that when she and I were young, my father would often say, the Holocaust could happen again and you better have your passports ready to go to Israel. My sister would respond, Dad, this is the United States. That could never happen here. The Anti-Defamation League, a leading anti-hate organization in the United States, determined that in 2023, there were 8,873 anti-Semitic incidents. This is a 140% increase from the number of incidents in 2022 and is the highest number on record since the organization began tracking these incidents in 1979. The 12-month total for 2023 surpassed the totals of all the past 3 years combined and averaged about 24 anti-Jewish incidents in the US per day. As we all know, anti-Semitism and all forms of hatred is ever prevalent in our society. However, anti-Semitism did not begin in the 20th century. It's the oldest form of hatred and has affected the Jewish community for thousands of years, pre-Christianity, pre-Islam. Sharing our family stories is of the utmost importance. It's now my generation's responsibility and the next to carry their torch. After this evening, each one of you will be witnesses to my family's story, and I hope that you will impart what you hear with others. When you walked in the door, you took my resources page. It has some common links, for example, the museum in Washington or the museum in Israel, but it also has links to specific places that my parents were at, or names of things that you may not have heard of. It also has some of the testimony. So when I say you can impart what you hear with others, bring that resource page home and share it with your friends and family. My mom, Edith Leuchter, was born in Bruchsal, Germany on December 31st, 1927. Her father, Max, owned a grocery store where he sold canned goods and produce, tools and butcher supplies. The family lived above the grocery store. In July of 1938, Max made the difficult decision to emigrate to the United States as he could tell that the future for him and his family was bleak. His plan was to send for his wife and children. When my grandfather Max arrived in New York, he sent this telegram to his wife Julia and his children Edith and Heinz. Pictured here is that telegram with the swastika emblem emblazoned on the envelope. Pictured here is my mom's family. This is my grandmother Julia, their wedding picture. My mom and her little brother Heinz, and the grocery store that they lived above. The night of November 9th, 1938 is known as Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass, which was government-sanctioned violence against Jews, their businesses, and synagogues in Germany, Austria, and areas of Czechoslovakia. In the middle of the night, my mom, Edith, was awakened by sirens and glass break-in. When she looked out her window, she could see flames and smell smoke. She was very frightened, so she crawled into bed with her mother and her little brother Heinz to seek comfort. Until my trip to her hometown in 2022, when I stood in front of my mother's childhood home, I didn't realize that the flames she saw were from her own synagogue, which was just steps from her house. This is not just a synagogue, this was my mother's synagogue. My grandmother Julia said it was no longer safe to stay in their home, so they moved to Matilda Weil's house, Edith's grandmother, about 10 minutes away. Life for Jews became quite difficult in Bruchsal and most places in Europe. At this point, Heinz, Edith's little brother, was sent to a school in Frankfurt. Edith is still bitter to this day that Heinz was sent away because she feels if he was not, our family story could have turned out differently, and he might have survived. The letter pictured here was written by Heinz to his father Max in the United States, and next to it is a drawing that Heinz made of himself and his sister holding hands. He must have missed her so. My family is quite fortunate that we still have many letters and drawings from my Uncle Heinz. From that school, Heinz was moved to an orphanage and eventually deported to Theresienstadt, a camp in Czechoslovakia. This letter was mailed from the camp itself. You can see it says Theresienstadt right there. To his aunt and uncle in Germany, who actually survived the war. He ends the letter with 1,000 kisses. Your loving Heinz. I wish I had known my uncle. From the letters I've read, he must have been a very loving boy. My family has numerous letters from my uncle, and they have all been translated for us. On May 19, 1944, he was deported to Auschwitz on a transport with almost 2,500 others. In total, 17,517 people were deported from Theresienstadt to Auschwitz. Upon arrival there, he was placed in a specific area called Theresen Family Camp. This camp was created within Auschwitz to mislead the world about the final solution, the deliberate and systematic murder of European Jews. I just finished reading a book called The Escape Artist, and it talks about this camp. I'm not positive, but so this camp specifically arrived on a certain date, and 6 months later, they were all murdered in the gas chambers. So there's a good chance that was my uncle. Of the 17,517 people who were deported from Theresienstadt to Auschwitz, only 261 survived. My Uncle Heinz was not one of them. He either died of starvation or disease or was murdered in the gas chambers. So you might ask, how do we know these facts and figures? It's because the Nazis kept impeccable records. On October 22nd, 1940, at least 6,500 Jews were deported from Bruchsal and surrounding areas in southwestern Germany. Early in the morning, the Gestapo knocked on the door, and my mom, her mother Julia, and her grandmother Matilda were told they had 1 hour to gather a few possessions and were forced to hand over the key to their home. So just think, if you were given 1 hour, what possessions would you take with you? They were marched to the railroad station along with about 120 Jews in their community. The footage that I'm about to show you was discovered only a few years ago in the Bruchsal, Germany archives. It was hidden, and in October 2022, my family met the gentleman who was responsible for having the footage made public only after he told the local government officials that he would bring them to court if the footage was not made available. In February 2020, we discovered that my mother, her mother, and grandmother are in the footage. In this frame, the young girl with the beret and the round suitcase or the hat box is my mom. This is my grandmother, Julia, and this is my great-grandmother, Matilda Weil. In 2022, my family traveled to Bruchsal, Germany to see the premiere of the play entitled The Girl with the Hat Box, which is based on my mother's story, and we are hoping to bring it to America. My mother identified this as the rabbi of the town when she saw the footage. grandmother, my grandmother, and my mother. See the Nazis and the bystanders standing in the background. A few days later, they arrived in Gurs, an internment camp in southwestern France. At this point, I like to point out the difference between internment camps and concentration camps. Concentration camps is where they murdered people. Internment camps were where they held people, however, the conditions were terrible, and many died of starvation or disease. In Gurs, Edith had to use straw to make mattresses, and there were too few blankets for the masses of people. She told me that it was extremely disgusting and very muddy. She attended school but didn't learn very much. 6 months later, in April 1941, Edith, her mother and grandmother were deported to another camp called Rivesaltes in southwestern France, called Poignant. In 2022, one of our friends in my mother's hometown presented us with a memorial book from the camp, as well as 2 stones he had brought back with him, which was quite meaningful. In this camp, Rivesaltes, my grandmother Julia developed a hernia and was ill. The barracks were infested with insects, and my mom says the beds looked like cages for rabbits. One bright spot was that Max, Edith's father, was able to send packages and food from the United States. Packages and money, excuse me. Edith was always hungry. She says the food consisted of watery soup with vegetables that looked like weeds. Her mother had to cut off her hair because of the proliferation of lice in the camp. The Vichy government of France gave the difficult choice to the parents in the camp to sign their children over to an organization called OSE, Organisation pour Sauver des Enfants, which translates from French to Children's Aid Society. This was a Jewish underground organization that operated throughout the war and saved over 5,000 Jewish children. My mom had to say goodbye to her mom, Julia, and her grandmother, Matilda, but she couldn't hug her grandmother because Matilda had body lice at this point. A few months later, she received a telegram from her mother that she was deported to Drancy, another internment camp in Paris, and we now know that from there, she was deported to Auschwitz. My family hopes that my grandmother, Julia, didn't make it there and died of the hernia in the cattle car on the long trip. However, we will never know. Oops. I need somebody. I'm trying to scroll down on my page, and it's not working. Actually, I think I'm good. I might need help on another slide, though. Sorry. By the end of the war, Edith was in 5 schools and orphanages. While she was in one school, she was also a part-time nanny from the area of Alsace-Lorraine, the geographic area between France and Germany. Edith was provided with a false identity, and her new name was now Edith Leuchter. She was given false papers that indicated she was from Alsace-Lorraine, where people speak both German and French, languages she knew. At one point, Edith was placed by the OSE, the Jewish underground organization, in an orphanage called Majolier for about 1.5 years. She made a lot of friends there and also met a boy named Kurt, and he really liked her. But she thought he was arrogant and didn't pay much attention to him. Toward the end of the war, she became a French Girl Scout. I found out recently that a Girl Scout in the Pittsburgh area is working on a Holocaust education patch. Never been done before. and she interviewed my mom about her time in the Girl Guides, as the Girl Scouts was known during World War II in France. Upon liberation, Edith was able to get an affidavit or a visa from her father, Max, and emigrated to the United States. She reached the port of New York on a freighter called the Fort Royale on April 23rd, 1946. This is an ad that my grandfather Max placed in a German Jewish newspaper post-war called the Aufbau, just 2 weeks prior to my mother arriving in New York. The ad asks for information regarding his wife and son, my Uncle Heinz and my grandmother Julia, who, as I said earlier, did not survive. So I often show this map to students of part of Europe just to show how far away they lived from each other when they were little. My dad was born in Austria. My mother was born in Bruchsal near Heidelberg, about 6 to 7 hours away, and they would never have met. My father, Kurt Leuchter, was born in Vienna, Austria, on February 6, 1929. His father, Moritz, owned a wholesale silk business. My father was an only child, and his parents vacationed each year, and they had a pretty good life. Until March 12, 1938. This is the day when Germany annexed Austria, known as the Anschluss, and all the borders were closed. On Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass, Kurt was sent home from school in the morning. Kristallnacht actually lasted from the 9th to the 10th. On his way home, he saw a synagogue burning, and the SS were shooting their rifles and dragging the men out of the synagogue. They were forced to throw the Torahs, the sacred Jewish scrolls, into the Danube River. He hurried home. When he got there, the SS were arresting his father and 9 other Jewish men. My father sat on the steps crying and waited for his mother, Rosa, to return home from shopping. She knew it was too dangerous to stay, so they walked 3 blocks to Kurt's grandmother's house. On their way, 2 SS approached them. One grabbed Kurt, and the other grabbed Rosa by the hair and threw them down onto the street. A woman passerby, presumably non-Jewish, tried to help them, but the SS threatened to send her to Dachau concentration camp. When they arrived at Kurt's grandmother's house, Kurt's cousin and his Aunt Paula were there as well. "10 days later, there was a knock at the door, and to their surprise, it was Moritz, my grandfather. He had been held in an armory, and the SS mistreated him. At one point, they demanded his wedding ring and threatened to cut off his finger if he couldn't remove it. Fortunately, he was finally able to do so. Moritz was told by the Nazis that he had 3 months to get his family out of Austria. So these 2 photos are brand new to my family. Last September, I went to Toronto for a conference for Holocaust survivors and their descendants, and outside the conference were some tables, including a table for Memorial de la Shoah, which is the museum and memorial in Paris, France. And I went up to them, I said, "Here's my grandparents' names. Can you find them in your database?" And she finds these pictures, and I go, "Dad, we've never seen these pictures before." He said, "No, we have not." Oh, did I? Yeah. Moritz was able to procure a visa via Genoa, Italy, and in February 1939, they arrived in Antwerp, Belgium. They had with them a few suitcases and a bit of jewelry that they had hidden in their clothing. Here in Antwerp, Kurt learned how to speak Flemish and French in school, and things were quiet for a while. Soon after arriving in Antwerp, my father was issued this passport, which, as you can see, has the swastika stamped on it. 1, 2, 3 times. But not just that, a big J, which obviously means Jew. But that's not all. What's above his name? I don't know if you can read it, but it says the name Israel. Now you gotta remember, this is pre-1948. The state of Israel did not exist yet. This is a biblical name. Does anybody possibly know why that name would be above my father's?
They were all called Israel.
Excuse me?
They were called Israel and Sarah.
That's right. So the Nazis assigned the name Israel to all Jewish boys and Sarah to all Jewish girls, one of the many ways they ripped away people's identities. In Antwerp, my father and his parents lived very close to a gentleman from the town of Brody, Poland, which is now part of Ukraine. This was a coincidence, as this was Moritz, my grandfather's hometown, as he was born in Poland and moved to Vienna when he was just a little boy. One night, when Kurt was eavesdropping on his parents' conversation, something I'm sure nobody in here ever does, he heard that this neighbor would let them hide a bit of jewelry in a washcloth in his basement wall. On May 10, 1940, the Germans invaded Belgium. Moritz, along with all the other Jewish men, were deported by the Belgians to the south of France. In July 1940, Rosa and Kurt were moved to a detention camp in Limburg, Belgium. My father's Aunt Paula, who looked Aryan, as she had blonde hair and blue eyes, approached the Gestapo to procure papers for them to move to Paris, and the Nazis granted her this permission. But they didn't stay long, as they wanted to be near Moritz, so they hired a guide to take them across the demarcation line. This sign, pictured here, is part of the permanent exhibit at the Holocaust Center of Pittsburgh, which is currently located at a university in the city. But it will also be part of the reimagined Tree of Life Museum. Some of you may have heard of it. So Tree of Life was where the massacre happened, and it's going to become a museum about anti-Semitism in America. So what does this sign say? Jews are forbidden to cross the line of demarcation to go to the occupied zone of France. Jews are those who belong or belong to the Jewish religion or who have more than 2 Jewish ancestors in their grandparents' generation. An individual's grandparents will be considered Jewish if they belong or belong to the Jewish religion. Any violation of the present decree will be punishable by imprisonment or a fine and by the possible confiscation of property. They crossed at night with 14 other Jews. The SS were guarding the border with guard dogs and machine guns. Luckily, they crossed without incident, and at this point they boarded a train for Marseille in the south of France. Kurt and Rosa accidentally got off the train one stop before Marseille, though, which was extremely dangerous as they had no ID papers. At only 11 years old, my father, Kurt, knew they were in peril and had to act quickly. So he grabs his mother's hand and hurries her through the train station to safety. Once they got out of the train station, they were able to find the Jewish agency, and they registered there. And they placed them in the agency placed them in a detention camp called Hotel Terminus de Port. Meanwhile, my grandfather Moritz was in 3 different camps in southern France. Saint-Cyprien, Gers, which I mentioned earlier in my mother's story, but they were in different sections and never crossed paths. And lastly, Camp des Milles. Camp des Milles was about 30 miles from where Kurt and his mom were. Kurt was able to travel to where his father was interned and bring food to him on the weekends. Soon after, Rosa and Kurt were moved to Camp des Milles as well. At one point, they were able to get a pass to go to the city of Marseille, and my father had his bar mitzvah, a religious initiation ceremony for boys when they turned 13, at a synagogue. But shortly after his bar mitzvah, Kurt's parents were given that same difficult choice to turn their son over to OSE, and on August 9, 1942, they signed the papers. These are the last letters that Rosa and Moritz, my grandparents, wrote to Kurt. He kept these letters in his pocket during the remainder of the war and still has them in his possession. The one on the left is from my grandmother, the one on the right from my grandfather. And we actually know that also because we have other examples of his handwriting. So the one from my grandfather on the right is dated August 11th, 1942, 6 days before my grandparents were deported. Here's some of what the two letters say. We've included 100 French francs in this letter, and our suitcases were mixed up, and somehow we received yours. Please send us bread. As another family in the camp was able to do so. 2 other couples were already deported, and we think we will be tomorrow or Thursday. Please contact our cousin Hans, who is in the French army, to see if he can help us get released from the camp. Please send us some food and be brave and give us joy. Kisses from your mother and dad, who love you. This was the last time my father heard from his parents. Rosa and Moritz were deported from Drancy, another internment camp in Paris, and then to Auschwitz, where they were murdered in the gas chambers. Kurt was then placed in Hotel Bompard, which was repurposed as a detention camp. The conditions were terrible, so he and some friends decided to escape one night when the French police were drunk. They were caught and were brought back there. The second time they escaped, they were more careful and went undetected. Somehow they knew that there was a home sponsored by this Jewish underground organization, Ozé, called Majelier. There, my father was able to procure food from nearby farmers using a bicycle with a wagon. Here's where he met a young girl named Edith, who he liked, but as I mentioned before, the feeling was not reciprocated. While there, Kurt and his friends were told they could go to the port of Marseille and board a ship for the United States. But at that point, the US had reached Africa, and the German U-boats were bombing the armed forces. So he was sent back to the orphanage for a brief period of time. In February 1943, my father was moved to a boys' delinquent home in a town called Gillebois. The director of the home, Mademoiselle Burel, knew he was Jewish, and she had a connection to the mayor of that town, and the mayor provided Kurt with false papers. His new name was now Claude Lambert. He, like my mother, was given a false identity from Alsace-Lorraine. This made sense because he was Austrian, and so he spoke German and was now learning French. In the home, he cooked and chopped wood and performed various other chores. Months later, somebody told the Nazis that there was a Jewish boy hiding in the home, so they came looking for him. My dad was hiding in a closet for several hours, and luckily the Nazis didn't open it. But the director knew at this point that Kurt could no longer stay there, and she made a connection for him to the Maquis, the French resistance, or the French underground. For the next year, Kurt lived in the woods and helped to blow up the last truck of passing German convoys, and also destroy the railroad tracks. They received French, British, and American assistance. Upon liberation, he was sent to 2 more orphanages in France, one in Lyon and one in Paris. At one point, he went back to the neighbor in Antwerp, Belgium. Remember the jewelry that was hidden in the washcloth? It was still there. In it were my grandfather's gold pocket watch and my grandmother's bracelet and wedding ring, and my father brought them to America. While living in Paris, he got a job making leather handbags, and in the evening attended a technical school. In August 1946, he boarded the French troop ship, the Athos II, along with about 70 other orphans. My dad was one of the older children and helped to take care of them on the journey. He arrived in the port of New York on September 8, 1946. In January 1947, my father was standing outside the Museum of Modern Art on the sidewalk, just chatting with his friends, when who should tap him on the shoulder but Edith, the girl he liked in Majelier, the orphanage in France. Well, they embraced, and Edith must have seen something different in Kurt this time because they fell in love. And on August 13th, 1950, they were married, which also happens to be our oldest son's birthday. Interestingly enough, my mother worked for a hat factory in the Empire State Building, and the play we attended in Germany is entitled Girl with the Hat Box. In January 1952, my father was drafted into the U.S. Army and spent 9 months in Korea on the 38th parallel. Luckily, he made it home safe. Eventually, my dad became a senior aerospace engineer for Grumman Aerospace on Long Island without a high school or college degree. And when I was reading about the Robert H. Jackson Center, now I didn't know about it until last year, I saw that Robert H. Jackson never had a college degree. So I think that's a really interesting parallel. So my father worked on the guidance and navigation system of several Apollo missions, and his name, along with those of several hundred other engineers, is still on the moon. Pictured here is my dad's signature. You can see it diagonal and bold, and you'll get it when you meet him soon. And our family has several copies of these plaques hanging in our homes. In 2011, my father was awarded the Legion of Honor Medal given to World War II veterans by the French government. Well, when I read the letter that accompanied it, something just did not make sense to me. I knew my father is a Holocaust survivor, a Korean War vet, and that his name's on the moon, but then realized for the first time that since he fought in the French resistance, he's a World War II vet as well. In 2017, my family traveled to my mother's hometown, Bruchsal, Germany, and we had 5 Stolperstein installed. By show of hands, has anybody heard of Stolperstein? Well, I'll tell you about it. It means stumbling stone. This project was created by Gunther Denmig, a non-Jewish German. There are now over 100,000 Stolperstein in over 25 countries, and it's considered the largest deconstructed Holocaust memorial in the world. If you travel to Europe, please be sure to look down, as these brass cap pavers are placed on the sidewalk in front of the homes people lived before being deported. Pictured here are 5 that we had installed for Julia and Max Loeb, my maternal grandparents, for Heinz and Edith Loeb, my mother and uncle, and my maternal great-grandmother, Matilda Weil. Matilda Weil's prayer book, pictured here from the 1880s, somehow survived, and we were able to use this prayer book to recite the Jewish morning prayer for the dead during the ceremony. So what did they say? You can't really see it from there, but so, for example, this one from my uncle says, "Here lived Heinz Loeb, born 1931, first in an orphanage in Frankfurt, deported to Theresienstadt, and then deported to Auschwitz, murdered." The townspeople of Bruchsal were absolutely wonderful. They welcomed us with open arms and were extremely generous of heart. Several spent the day of the ceremony with my family, and there was even an assembly at the local middle school with presentations by students. 5 families were honored that day with Stolperstein, including mine. One family who still lives in the town didn't even know until the town made them aware of it that their great uncle, who was special needs, was murdered by the Nazis. The students' presentations included research they conducted about these families. And the young lady who made the presentation about my family came back to see the girl with the hat box 5 years later. I grew up on Long Island, New York, in a loving but complicated home. My parents were extremely overprotective, understandably so. My exposure to anti-Semitism began in 1st grade, when my classmate called me a dirty Jew. In middle school, a boy said firecrackers in the stairwell as I was leaving. When I was 16 and home alone, a boy said firecrackers in the stairwell. Oh, I just said that. When I was 16 and home alone, the mailbox affixed to our house was blown up, and eggs were often thrown at our house. At my current job in Pittsburgh many years ago, my former boss who sat close to me was on the phone one day and I overheard him saying, "Well, why don't you Jew him down?" You'll have to look that up if you don't know what it means. More recently, I went to a local sandwich shop in my neighborhood and I asked if they had black and white cookies, which I know is a cookie typically served in New York. And I mentioned to the young woman behind the counter that I've had them at my synagogue, and she looked right at me and said, "You don't look Jewish." I didn't let it go. I let her have it. In 2019, the brother of my classmate who called me a dirty Jew in first grade made a completely innocent post on my high school's Facebook group. But I decided to message him, mentioning what his sister had said to me. And he contacted his sister, and she wrote me this email. "My adult self is not shocked to see this, given what was said and taught in my home, but I am no less ashamed, horrified, and saddened, especially when I see how this has stuck with you and hurt you so badly. If it's any comfort, I am not the same person and do not advocate hate against anyone and don't tolerate it in my life. Maybe it's some comfort in knowing that I have not continued to hurt others like I hurt you. Thank you for being open to my message. It's great to hear that it had a positive effect." As I mentioned, my parents are 96 and 97. Last August, they celebrated their 74th wedding anniversary. Pictured here are my two biological sons, my sister, my nieces, obviously my parents, and this little lady on the far right is our grandchild, who is now 3.5. And this is the newest member of the family, my sister's grandson. So my parents were fortunate enough to survive the Holocaust and build a life post-war. 6 million Jews were murdered in the Holocaust, but the total number of murder victims, Jews and non-Jews, is approximately 11 million. In addition to Jews, the Nazis deemed the following groups of people as unfit to live: those with special needs, the LGBTQ community, Roma or Sinti, political dissidents, people of color, and more. So what I want you to do right now is try to imagine if those millions of people had survived. What novels could have been written, or diseases could have been cured? What music could have been created? What inventions might we have that could have improved our world? Not to mention all the children they could have had. 11 million people forcefully removed from their homes, families, and life paths. Keeping this in mind, in their memory, we have an ever-piercing call to action, to speak out against hate and discrimination when we are witness to it, and to be kind to others. Kindness can help break down barriers between people and foster understanding and empathy. My mom's last name is Loeb, which means strong man or lion. And my father's last name is Leuchter, which means candelabra. I'd like to think that the strength and many branches of my family that now exist give us all light and hope for the future. Thank you for listening. So now we're going to get my parents on for Q&A. While they're setting that, can I take this off the? Yeah. Great. Nah. Well, I don't know if you want me to. So while they're getting my parents on the screen, I want to just mention a couple things. Dad's hard of hearing. Mom has supersonic hearing. She may repeat what I say to him. He may interrupt her. Yeah, they're kind of like a Seinfeld episode. So when you ask a question, even if you come up and ask it or we bring the mic back to you or whatever, I don't know exactly what we're doing, they may not be able to hear you, or it might be too complicated a question for them, so I might repeat it or change it a little bit, so just so you know.
Ask them to turn on their video.
Okay. Dad, can you turn on your camera? Is he unmuted? Yay! Can you get rid of me? I don't want to see me. I see me all the time. Hang on, okay? There we go. Can you say something? Okay, hold on, we can't hear you. Hang on. Dad, can you say something?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Absolutely. Can we make it any louder, Ed?
Okay.
Can we also move them so people can see them?
Picture's very small there.
Okay, oh, well, I don't know what to tell you. There's people on Zoom with you. It looks like 12 participants on Zoom, so those of you on Zoom, thank you for joining. Can most of you see? Great. Can you see me? No, they can't see me at this point. Oh, should I open because they like to see, yeah. Okay, hold on. Can you see me?
No.
All right, well, you see me all the time, so. Okay, we're gonna open up to Q&A. Now you can?
We're on the picture.
Okay.
You're
So,
not,
what, Dad?
you're not on the picture, we are.
Okay, don't worry about it. So at this point, I'd like to open it up to Q&A. No question is stupid, and I share a lot of details. So if you ask me a question I already covered, don't be shy.
You can't see the audience?
What, you can't see the audience?
No.
Okay, my parents always like to see the audience. Ed, is that something? And they like to say hello. Is that something we can do?
Our picture's very small.
Hold on.
So small.
Ed's going to try to show them the audience? Okay. Hang on. Okay, can you see the
Okay,
audience?
you can see now.
Great.
Hello.
Yes, thank you for saying hello to them. Okay, so we do have a question.
So your grandmother's or your mother's prayer book.
My great-grandmother's prayer book.
How did you come about getting that back into your possession?
That is a great question. So, the question is about Mommy's grandmother's prayer book. So I will answer it, okay?
Good.
Okay. My mother had an Aunt Liesel who escaped by going to England. We're not sure if it was her or if it left with my grandfather who came to America. So we're actually not sure. And then it went into the possession of cousins in Philadelphia. And they gave it to us before we went to Germany for the installation of the Stolperstein. Thank you. I'm sure there's lots of questions. Okay, I'll ask them one. Mom and Dad, were you able to keep in touch with anybody from France after you, oh, hold on.
Yes.
Oh, fantastic. I was hoping you could do that. Amazing. Okay. Ooh, do you see Mark, my husband?
Where?
No.
He's right there. Wave, Mark.
There's another man in the front that's hidden. some kind of a son.
Okay, whatever. So the question is, were you able to keep in touch with anyone that you met in France? Mommy?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, that was short and sweet. Tell me a little bit about them. When you say you kept in touch, you mean you stayed friends with them? What?
We had meetings together. We got together a lot of times. It was much fun to have somebody with us.
So I'm sorry, Dad. So growing up in our house, barbecues and picnics with Holocaust survivors and their children, it really is really amazing. Unfortunately, except for maybe 2, they're all gone now. Okay. Yes. I think Elizabeth's going to run up with the microphone.
This one is for you, Dad. I wonder when you were in the service if you served with other Holocaust survivors.
Oh, that's a great question, too. Daddy,
Yes.
when you were in Korea,
Yeah.
were there any other Holocaust survivors beside you?
Yes.
There were. I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
No. No.
Okay.
Some of my friends were there.
Some
They
of your...
came home.
I did not know that. And I remember the cantor from our synagogue on Long Island. Wasn't he the chaplain in Korea, Cantor Rubenstein?
Yeah. He was the chaplain, yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. So, Dad, do you have something in the cabinet that you would like to share?
Oh, okay. All right, something okay.
Be careful.
Okay.
He just fell 2 days ago and went to urgent care. Hi, Mommy.
Okay.
What is this?
This is the lunar module that went up on the moon. It's the exact replica.
Can you hold it higher?
I worked on the garden system of that park. There were a lot of engineers.
Can you, Daddy, can you hold it higher? Higher.
Can you hold it higher?
There you go. And what did you work on the top part or the bottom part?
I went to the top part.
Yes. And where's your signature?
The bottom part is on the moonstone. It has the plaques on
Right.
the lecture. All the engineers that worked on it.
Okay. All right, you want to put it down? Thank you. Thank you. I see you're wearing your Korean war vet cap, Dad.
Yeah, the reason I wear it, I fell a few days ago, I mean, a couple of weeks ago, and I had about 15 stitches in it. And it's not good looking at.
Well, how about we all say thank you for your service?
Okay, everybody thank you, thank you. I appreciate it.
Everybody
Yeah,
was...
we get a lot of compliments from a lot of people.
Yeah, Daddy, everybody just thanked you for your service by clapping, okay? Just so you know.
Yeah, all veterans, all Korean veterans, they appreciate what we did.
Right. Thank you. Let's see if there's more questions. Yes.
So that picture when of
Mark,
Mommy
yeah.
in New York
Mark.
in front of the museum, were those other girls that she had come with from, oh, you don't know?
We only found that picture. So the question was the picture in front of Museum of Modern Art. Were the other girls in the picture girls from Europe? I assume they were from Europe because I mean that's who she was hanging out with. But I don't know, and we only came upon it a few years ago. My presentation has evolved over the years, and I've added more and more. Like I told you about the picture of my grandparents. Yeah.
How has it been witnessing as much history as you both have?
Can you? Is that Zoom? Oh, I didn't see the person. Where is that? Okay, can you repeat that, please?
How has it been like witnessing as much history as you two have?
Okay, that's going to be too complicated for them to answer. I'm trying to think of how I can reword it. I really don't know how I can reword that question.
What's the question?
What's it like for you that you witnessed so much history?
Well, I remember. I think I good memory, thank God.
Yeah.
I still remember things. I remember when I was 6 years old, when I went to my cousin in Hungary. I remember all these things.
How about I ask another question kind of similar, okay? Do you think history repeats itself?
I hate to tell you that, but I think it will.
How do you feel about the current situation? Leave out politics, please.
Don't ask.
Okay, you can tell by their faces. So, Dad, so at this point, I'm going to ask my father to share a very specific message that he typically shares with students. And we have a lot of students here tonight, Dad. We have some local high school students here. So what's the message that you usually share with students?
Yeah, I go to high school, sometimes I have 300-500 youngsters. And I speak there. And then what I tell them most of the time, if you watch television or read a newspaper, don't watch one station, watch different stations, read different newspapers, and make up your own mind. Don't let anybody tell you what to do. You're the boss. You decide what's right, what's wrong, not somebody else.
Thank you so much for that important message, Dad. So to the younger people in the audience, I know you're not reading newspapers, maybe you're not watching TV, but you're certainly looking at social media. So Instagram and TikTok, not always the truth. Do your research, and like he said, you decide what's right. Yes, in the front row. Yeah.
State of affairs. Where do you find the ability, it's such a big ask for that kind of forgiveness to move forward?
I'm going to change that, if you don't mind. I'm sorry, but you did hear me in the beginning. So, how do you feel about the current situation in the world?
No, it doesn't look good at all.
I'll tell you that
It doesn't look good at all.
I'll tell you that
Because
sorry.
people in other countries are offended now what happened. I don't know. I don't think it's right, but what can I tell you?
Okay. By the way, I just want you all to know that my mother is not sleeping. Her eyes are closed sometimes because she's just much more comfortable that way. What I was just going to mention just left my head, so.
I only hope it never happens again.
Oh, I know what I was going to say.
Because it's a terrible thing for people who have only heard about it and don't witness it. It's awful. Let me tell you.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that after October 7th, they shared with me that they didn't want to live anymore. Okay, we have another question.
I don't have a question, but I wanted to thank you for this. And I also wanted to say that I also came from Nazi Germany in 1938. We were lucky enough to get out in September of 1938. It was supposed to be a free city of Danzig in Poland, where we were, but we were just lucky to get out. My father got out first and wired us to come. We were supposed to go in 1939, and we're just lucky. But I was really felt, you went through so much, and I really appreciate this.
So I'm sure they didn't hear you, so let me share. But before that, are you Jewish, if you don't mind me asking? Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure. So there's a woman in the audience, you can see her, I hope, and she wanted to thank you, and she said she got out in 1938. But I'd like to point out to you that you are a Holocaust survivor. According to Yad Vashem, if it was between 1933 and 1945, you are a Holocaust survivor. Dad, I was talking, so I didn't hear what you said. Could you say that again?
I said, I've seen all that in my young years.
Yeah.
What's happening? I've seen the trains go away, cattle cars full of people with no food in there, no facilities. Taken to the street. My parents were 5 days, one of those cattle cars from Paris to Auschwitz, and they got killed 3 days later. They got killed.
So, two things. The woman in the audience who said thank you, I don't know if you heard me, but she's Jewish and she got out in 1938. The other thing what?
Very lucky.
Yes, she was very lucky.
That's right.
Yes.
I got 3 uncles that got out in 38.
Yep.
They were lucky too. One got out actually in 39. When they had it was 38. When the Kristallnacht.
Yeah.
He got out. They got out that same day, and they were trying to track him down, but they had the passports and everything.
So my father said a word that I'm going to make a comment about. So he said 5 days after they were deported, they were killed. I never use that word in my presentation or when I speak to people.
Murdered.
Thank you, Daddy. My family and the 6 million, the 11 million, they were murdered. 2 different definitions. Do we have any more questions? Yes, Diane. So wait, before you ask the question, okay? So I just want you to know there's a woman in the audience who met you at my wedding in 1986. Wave. I haven't seen her in 39 years, and she came tonight to hear us speak.
I can't see the woman.
Wave.
There's a sign in front.
She's waving. Can you see her waving?
No, I see her holding the hand.
Okay, well, that's her. Yes, Diane.
Hi, Mr. and Mrs. Leuchter. I respect your story so much, and one of the things that keeps going through my head, what do you think it was that you had in you to keep going?
Okay. So she heard you. What'd you say, Dad?
I guess my parents taught me a lot.
You gotta listen.
In the few years that I saw them, I lived till I was bar mitzvah, the 13 there, and then they got taken away.
But the other thing you always say is, how did you keep faith, Dad?
Well, it's not easy, but I tell you, you have to look forward. There's always an end, and the light at the tunnel. That's why I was in the army and everything. You always think that you're going to come out alive. That's all you can do.
Thank you. Mommy.
Yes.
How was your childhood before you were deported?
Oh, I had a very good childhood. I had Jews and non-Jew friends, and we just were together. We were just playing and going to school. It was very, very nice.
Thank you for sharing that, Mom. Her first grade classmate came to the Stolperstein ceremony.
Yes, she was.
Not Jewish, obviously. Yeah. I think I saw somebody else had their hand up. Yes, sir.
Kurt, what was the first thing that went through your mind when Edith tapped you on the shoulder in front of the museum in New York?
I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. After 4 years of separation, where she was in one place hidden, I was in the underground, I couldn't believe it. We both got to America. She got 6 months before me, and I came 6 months later. And all of a sudden, I happened to go to that museum with some friends of mine, of course. And something comes back to the shoulder. I couldn't believe it. But the first thing I asked, give me a phone number. It worked.
I love to hear that.
4 years, 75 this year.
That's right, 75 in August.
Yeah. Thank God. Never thought it would happen.
Yeah. So, Elizabeth, how many people are here tonight?
Yes, how many people are there tonight?
100? Okay. So there's 100 people in the audience, and I think there's 11 or 12 on Zoom. Did you hear me?
Yes. Very good.
Almost as many as last night. I spoke in a library last night. It was really amazing. It's about an hour from Pittsburgh. And they have a traveling exhibit from the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in D.C. called Americans and the Holocaust. And they had 4 different speakers. And I spoke last night, and there were 144 people, and the students were behind a wall, and they couldn't even see my presentation, but they were listening. It was amazing. Anybody else have a question? Yes.
For your mom, I'm just wondering how you reacted when you saw your picture and heard about the girl with the hat box.
Okay. Mommy?
Yes?
Do you remember when I showed you your picture when you were walking to the train station?
Yeah.
Do you remember how you felt when you saw your own picture of when you were deported?
Yeah, she feels very bad.
Yeah, that was the question. And how do you feel about the fact that a play was written about your life during the war?
Oh, that's beautiful. That's very nice. I thank everybody that they
right.
The people in Germany, when we went back, and in her town, they're exceptionally friendly. Very nice.
So now that you asked that question, I'm going to share a little bit about how it came to be. So in 2017 was the Stolperstein. The footage comes to light. It was in the Bruxelles archives. And there's one gentleman in Bruxelles, his name is Rolf Schmidt, and he's made it his life's work to honor the Jews who lived in Bruxelles. And the theater got wind of the footage and wanted to know, well, was there anybody who survived? And Rolf says, yes, the young lady. My mom was 12, almost 13. And the theater contacted a playwright, and the playwright, this is during COVID. So we Zoomed over and over and over again. Myself, my parents, my sister, who I'm not sure if she's on Zoom. She was supposed to join us for Q&A, but maybe she's not, I don't know. Julie Thumb or Steve Thumb? Okay, she must not have been able to make it. She's there. Oh, can we get her on, you can't get her on camera because it's a webinar. Julie, I'm so sorry.
She can type a question.
Can you type something in the chat, Julie? Oh, you can't hear the people asking the questions. Okay. Julie, would you type something in the chat, and in the meantime, I'm going to read something from my friend Linda. Debbie, thank you, as a child of Holocaust survivors as well, which I know. This is so meaningful to me. I am in tears, and your dad's message. To think for yourself and decide what is right. To exercise independent judgment and form your own opinions based on your own values. So crucial today and always. Evil is usually only achieved when tyrants receive support and obedience from followers. And do not be silent. Silence is complicity. Linda.
That's true.
Thank you, Linda, so very much.
Linda Hurwitz.
No, not Linda Hurwitz, somebody else.
That's a true thing.
Yes, that was beautiful.
I'll keep quiet.
Can I get the chat like afterwards? My sister's asking a question. Yes, Julie, we're still here.
No, I'm typing that to her.
Oh.
I'm trying to get her to respond to you.
Oh my God, that's so funny. Okay, maybe not. That was at 6:52. Okay.
I'll keep an eye on it.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else? Oh, the teacher. So while the teacher is coming down, I just want to tell you guys up there, it all starts small. If you see something, say something. Don't let the bullies get away with it. I'm telling you, it starts small. And thank you so much for listening. Yes?
You're very nice. Maybe you did a good job.
Thank you.
I'm here with about 30 young people, and I would like for you to share any words of wisdom that you can give them as they go forth in this world of bias and prejudice in the world that we're seeing a lot more of recently, and how you can instill something positive in them. I know that you are wonderful people.
That might be really hard, but we'll see, okay? Any words of wisdom for the young people in the audience? Daddy, any other messages for the students in the audience?
No, just what I said before.
Yeah, I knew he'd say that.
Don't let anybody influence you. You're the boss. Whatever you read, whatever you want to see, you see. And then you make up your own mind.
Thank you, Dad.
Don't let anybody tell you what to think about.
So I'm going to say a couple of things before we end the Zoom, unless there's no other questions. Great. So do you want to say anything to the audience before I say a last couple of things? Like, thank you? Do you want to thank the audience before we end? Hello? Would you like to thank the audience? Okay.
So you're talking to me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, sure. I would like to say.
Mommy, would you like to thank all these people in the audience?
Yeah, I thought you were talking to the kids.
Oh, that's so funny. I love it.
Okay, yes, I appreciate it. My wife too.
Yes.
I really appreciate you coming and listening to my daughter.
Okay.
She's a very good person, speaker.
Thank you. So, you guys can't see what I've got.
Matter of fact, my son-in-law is in the audience too. He's right there in front. Hey, Mark, where are you?
Wave, Mark.
Okay, Mark, take care.
So, I'm wearing 2 pins tonight. I'm assuming a lot of the young people follow people on Instagram, as do I, even though I'm old. It's hashtag Blue Square, stand up against Jewish hate, started by Robert Kraft, the owner of the New England Patriots. There were a couple commercials on a couple of the last 2 Super Bowls. Follow them. They're going to be telling the truth. And then the pin on the right is from Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem, Israel. And it came with a saying. So the top is barbed wire and the bottom is leaves. The barbed wire stem recalls the pain and trauma of the Holocaust, while the leaves stemming from the wire symbolize the rebirth and hope that emerged in the wake of this unparalleled tragedy. Wearing this pin expresses my commitment to remembering the past in order to ensure a better future for our children. Thank you again for coming. I'm not going anywhere. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
Very good. Very good, Debbie.